Black is one of the hardest colours to paint. It either looks flat or dark grey. I need to paint my chaplain, and because it's all black, I picked 3 different ways to paint the black. One for the cloak, one for the leather, and one for the armour. So each bit reads as a different material. You can instantly tell what each part is, not just another black bit. But the last bit shows how you can fix any black. It's easy for it to read as grey, so I'll show you how you can make it look black again. First, the cloak. I'm using messy techniques, so any mistakes will be covered later. Prime the chaplain matte black from Colourforge. This applies a smooth base coat to start from. I started by overbrushing the cloak with Corvus Black from Games Workshop. This is a very dark grey that starts to define the shapes of the cloak. Overbrushing is like dry brushing, but you leave more paint on your brush, so you paint the midtones too, leaving just the recesses showing. You don't need Corvus Black specifically. Any near black grey overbrushes the same way, just keep it lighter than the primer so it still reads as black. With a light weathering sponge from Knott's Hobbies, I sponged on thin down XV88 around the bottom of the cloak. This adds some more interest to the model and breaks up the black. Before I painted the model, I dabbed most of the paint on my texture palette to control how much paint is on the sponge. This stops any mistakes happening. Any coat this long will drag along the ground, collecting dirt and dust at the bottom of it. The coat was dry brushed with Storm Vermin Fur. I focused on the edges and raised folds, adding a mid-grey highlight. Doing this after the weathering further defines the shape, it breaks up the brow and it isn't on the raised areas. I applied a heavier dry brush to the hood, and this would receive more light than the bottom of the cloak. Also, this draws the eye to the face of the model, as this area is lighter than the rest of the model. To finish the cloak, I added a light stipple of Overland Sunset to the bottom of it. I removed most of the paint like I was dry brushing, then painted with a stabbing motion. This added further light weathering to the edges. It's more visible over the Storm Vermin Fur, adding a subtle highlight to the weathering. That's how you can paint a black cloak on any model. The weathering helps to break up any large black areas. I'll show you a couple of hacks for any leather negs, not just black leather. If you want to try sponging and claim your free bag of weathering sponges, just cover the shipping. Click the link in the description. Next is the leather, holster, belt and pouches. Over the same black primer, I added thick highlights of Steel Legion Drab. This defines the shapes and starts to add some wear to the leather. The edges will get scuffed the most, so will be lighter in colour to the rest of the leather. I'm adding a second highlight because it's hard to shade black that isn't a darker colour for the recesses. Here's a tip for realistic leather. I'm adding a second scratchy highlight. On the edges of the leather, I'm slipping on the highlight and adding scratches with Karak stone to show creases in the leather. Instead of painting a solid line, I'm painting dots and dabbing the edge of the brush on the bit I want to highlight. This adds a worn look and helps show that this is leather, not a hard case. After both highlights, I wash the whole area with mud oil wash from Knott's Hobbies. Ties the highlights to the black and makes it look like one surface, not just lines painted on. The reason I use the mud wash is because it's a warm brown that contrasts nicely with the other bluish black. This means it quickly stands out against the cloak. You can swap the colours for any other types of leather you want to paint. The scratchy highlights are the key to realistic leather. Next, I'll show you how to fix your blacks. The last black to paint is the armour. I started painting the armour with a heavy dry brush of rust grey, somewhere between dry brushing and overbrushing. With this, I'm trying to add edge highlights and volumetric highlights. I'm using a blue grey to add a different tone to this black. Don't be afraid to be heavy with this because I'll wash it later. Then dry brush Primaris grey on the armour. With this, I just want to add a highlight to all the edges. This is a quick and easy way to add your highlights. Don't worry, if it looks grey, I'll show you the fix next. This is the secret. I wash the whole thing with a 50-50 mix of black Templar and contrast medium. Contrast medium thins the paint so the wash goes on smooth and even and doesn't pull on the flat armour panels. This pulls the grey back down to black, but the dry brush highlights still show through underneath. If your back's ever gone to grey, this is how you save it. Any dark grey or backwash works instead of this mix. As long as it's dark enough, pull back without losing the highlights. If you want more tips to help you finish your army, click below for our free painting guides. With the free black done, the rest of the model came together very quickly. I overbrushed the bone areas with Karak stone and any skull details or parchment too. The warm tones here contrast against the blue-grey blacks. so they stand out instead of blending in. Finished off these areas with a Wraith Bone dry brush, as these bits aren't the main parts of the model, they just need to be painted good enough. The silver was painted on the bolter, and any metal detail I don't know how to paint were painted with lead vulture. I applied 2 thin coats for a smooth base coat. Then I washed them with a Greg Surf shade. The natural shine of the paint does enough that you don't need to add a highlight. Retributor Armour was used to base coat the gold. I painted any small metallic details gold that will break up the silver areas. Then I washed them with Brightland Flesh Shave. This classic combo creates a warm, rich gold with minimal effort. I've used green throughout my Blood Ravens as a spot colour, so the handle was painted green to match the rest of my army. It was overbrushed with Lowering Forest and then dry brushed with Ogre and Camo. Using green as a spot colour for any random details throughout the army saves so much time and brings the army together with one trip. Any lost details were painted red to match the other characters. The symbol on the gun, the details on the shin, and the book on their waist. I used World Bearers Red for the mid-tone. I finished it with a Wild Rider Red dry brush and used the sculpture details on the model to highlight the areas. The model was finished with a transfer on the shoulder pad. I used Micro Salt and Micro Set for this step. To help remove the glossiness, I painted a couple of layers of Lamian medium over it too. I applied Russian mud from below to the model's base, as I have with the rest of my army. I added a quick dry brush of Steel Legion Drab, as the coat covers most of the base. There isn't a space for any tufts or extra bits. Then I painted the base rim with a Baden black. 3 blacks, 1 model. They all read slightly different and give you a few different techniques to use next time you paint something black. If it ever looks too grey, you can make it black with a heavy wash. If you enjoy painting Warhammer, click here to find out what Games Workshop doesn't want you to know. There's a hack to save paint that they never mention intentionally.